Apologies for absence were received from Mr. Brown and Mrs. Green. The minutes of the previous meeting were taken as read, discussed extensively, approved and agreed. Matters arising. Several committee members disagreed over the details contained within the financial report. There was a disagreement over the exact figures and whether the amounts given in the accounts section reflected the present state of affairs of the company. Further discussion took place on this subject, and it was agreed that an amendment be made in order to correct any uncertainty over this matter. Some members thought that the amended section could be added to the existing report, but others felt that the accountants should make a detailed study of the changes and additions needed, and then redraft and resubmit the report. It was agreed that this latter solution would be much more satisfactory. The redrafted figures would be circulated as soon as they were available, so that the committee members could record their approval or otherwise at the next meeting. Some discussion ensued on who was responsible for checking for errors and omissions, and whether extra staff were required in the accounts department to cover this. Various suggestions were offered in the ensuing discussions, and Mr. Black suggested that a list of possible solutions to the problem be submitted for consideration. It was also proposed that more time should be allowed for draft reports to be created, and that they should be checked thoroughly and corrected before being presented at board meetings. The lengthy process of compiling the necessary facts and figures was seen as an essential part of the running and ongoing improvement of the organisation's operations. It was felt that this task should receive higher priority than has been the case in recent years. A copy of the annual report and the monthly reports for the past year were presented to the directors. The annual report and accounts will be made available to the Board of Directors within the next week. The report and accounts have been sent to all the shareholders. The progress of the new building work currently being carried out to the factory and offices was reviewed, and it was unanimously agreed that the decisions taken at last month's Planning Committee meeting should be approved and implemented immediately. It was agreed that the recommendations set out at that time should be carried out without delay, and that a meeting with the General Manager of the Building Department be set up for no later than the end of next month. This would be an opportunity for building staff to present any concerns or problems that they might encounter, and for all the issues to be resolved before any work is commenced. Problems encountered in the past had been solved at a local level, but it was becoming necessary to take measures to prevent them being repeated and causing unnecessary delays and costs. The results and outcomes of that meeting are to be circulated to the committee members for information only. It would also be necessary to inform the appropriate departments of the proper action that they should take, as well as the timescale and targets that they are expected to work to. It was agreed that a memorandum should be sent to the heads of department without delay. This will enable the departmental managers to organise their time, staff and resources in order to incorporate these additional new projects into their plans for this year's activities. Discussions were held on the profit and loss account, the hedge fund, stocks and shares, and our financial liabilities. The chairman of the committee was of the opinion that when formal motions are tabled, moved, proposed, seconded, voted on, and passed, this should be fully recorded in the minutes. A strategy meeting with senior management must be held as soon as practicable to carry out the proposals. This should be followed immediately by the creation and drafting of a comprehensive plan of action. The job of the creation of the plans and their subsequent correction was allocated to several of the senior staff in the personnel department. It was necessary to determine which workers and operatives should be involved at the planning stage, in order that they are able to make informed decisions in good time. It is hoped that our vision can now go forward without any setbacks or hindrances. The immediate commencement and implementation of such a policy would give the managers insufficient time to consult the appropriate panels of advisors and consultants. This policy document will result in everyone being in possession of information that is relevant and up to date. They can then investigate all the options open to them in order to make the most efficient and advantageous decisions for the furtherance of our business. Mrs. White suggested that the firm could also request contributions of ideas and possible new initiatives from the shop floor workers, and possibly interview the more experienced employees who have first-hand knowledge of the processes involved. They would be able to maintain the status quo, whilst at the same time draw up plans for the requisite improvements to achieve and even surpass the production targets. It was agreed that Miss Gray would approach the general managers of each department for their views, opinions, and recommendations on this new project, and subsequently compile a report into the advisability and feasibility of such a scheme. The meeting was adjourned at noon and reconvened at 1 p.m. It was noted that the Finance Secretary did not attend the afternoon session. Financial matters had been satisfactorily dealt with during the morning session. The Treasurer was satisfied with the accuracy of the published review dealing with the business's overall financial situation during the past year. The Secretary requested that certain aspects of the legal issues should be mentioned at the annual general meeting. It was not thought necessary to seek the approval of the delegates and reps in the field for these minor changes to the schedule of events. Approval was sought to set up a standing committee for the purpose of governing the activities of the elected representatives of the workforce. It was felt that a senior body should be created by general consent. Representatives should be elected or appointed, and a set of rules of conduct drawn up. In the event of opposition to this proposal, a secret ballot would be offered in order to obtain a consensus on how the company and its subsidiaries should proceed in this matter. The matter of the remuneration of volunteers' expenses was shelved, pending an enquiry into the legal and financial regulations on this subject. It is intended to carry out an in-depth study of the rules and regulations that presently govern these particular conditions. Advice would be sought, and if necessary, an extraordinary meeting convened to discuss this at length with those directly involved. It was hoped that this would bring about a satisfactory resolution to the questions that had been raised. It was anticipated that most attendees would vote in favour of the motion, although there were a small number of interested parties who would be voting by proxy. It was estimated that the postal vote would account for approximately 10%, and that time should be allowed for these to come in and be counted. In reviewing his time as chairman of the company, Mr. Smith said that his primary function had been to oversee the ongoing growth, stability, and prosperity of the company. He had witnessed significant changes to the fortunes of the business through the various ups and downs of the market conditions and the unstable economic climate. He referred back to his days serving on the many advisory committees, as well as his honorary post of secretary many years ago. He described his times leading groups of enthusiastic staff and delegations to the many functions, conventions, and exhibitions around the country. Those attending the conference were unanimous in their praise for the reporters who had consistently and successfully met all their deadlines. Everyone had successfully completed the tasks and assignments within the timescale required. It was decided that future tasks will be assigned on the basis of experience and past performance. This revised policy will result in a significant improvement in the company's track record. It is hoped that these new teleconferencing, online conferencing, and seminar facilities will significantly improve communication within the company. Under the heading of any other business, there was a brief discussion on the merits of merging the two subcommittees. The general consensus was that this would be to our advantage, but that it would require the complete agreement of all their members. It was decided that this topic would be brought up at the next annual general meeting, after which it could be referred back to local committees for further revision and eventual implementation. The date of the next meeting was left undecided due to the members' existing heavy diary commitments, and so this will be advised in due course. Finally, the committee discussed the very important question of the materials and resources available for sustaining the continued energy levels and growth of its attendees. And there was complete agreement that the usual refreshments of water, dry biscuits and stale cookies should be discontinued in favour of the more relevant tea, coffee, fruit juice and jam sponge cake. After a show of hands, with no abstentions or opposition, this very welcome proposal was unanimously agreed and acted upon without delay, to the complete satisfaction of all present.